I'm going to introduce today's guest. This is Sabrina Fuller. She is the executive producer at WDBJ TV in Roanoke, Virginia. They cover 26 counties.
Yep.
Right?
That's right.
I listen. So she's the executive producer. It was her. She started working at the station right out of college. Mm-hmm. She is from that area, and she rose through the ranks. Now she's an executive producer, and she does produce a newscast each evening. So anyway, she's always spoken in my class about social media, and she spoke in journalism about showcasing elements and writing to video and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, she has different topics for us now. So take it away, Sabrina.
All right.
Welcome.
So Lisa about summed it up there. How many of you want to get into TV news specifically? Yep. Sports? Okay. So when you watch TV, the producer is the one who puts everything together, chooses what order the stories will go in, how things will look, what video we're going to use, what reporters we're going to use, all that stuff. So the first thing we have to ask ourselves, our starting point is, what's our lead story? So what do you think makes a story a leadable story?
Relevant.
To who?
Your audience.
Okay. Yeah.
Something that will impact the community's life or lives.
Yeah.
In any way.
Yep. That's all good. So it's right there on the board, impact or the value of the story. Interest, even if it's not a story that impacts everybody, will it interest everybody or most people? Conflict and context, that's what you'll find more in like investigative pieces, is finding a conflict and putting it all into context for the viewer. And then of course, breaking news, there's also weather, sports can be leadable. It all just depends, but this is where the producer has to start, is with this.
Speak up just a little louder. Is that
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought the.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. So that's kind of the starting off point. For the producer, when we're building our rundowns, it's not just about the lead story, but about every other story in the newscast as well, whether it's an hour long, whether it's half an hour long. So you start with what the big story is, what your best visuals are. You may have great pictures, you may have a great sound bite, you may have great, crazy video. How do you take all that and put it all together for the viewer? The producer also has to advocate for the content they want. If you want a story from somebody and you think it's a great story, you've got to be willing to fight for it, because every other producer is going to want it too. And then we, of course, have to communicate with our reporters, anchors, meteorologists, sports folks, everybody. We're the ones checking in with them saying, hey, how much time do you need? What do you have going on today? Where can I use you? So that's a little bit about what the producer does. We have 8 producers in my newsroom. We have 15 MMJs, so they report alone. They don't have a photographer to go out there with them. And they're turning content for several shows, multiple shows each. I was telling Lisa, typically one will shoot a package and a VOSOT. The package will go in one show, the VOSOT may go in another on 2 different topics. And you might leave something for the night side team as well. So there's a lot to do. And they're going live, they're setting up their own live shots. So it's a pretty busy day for a reporter. Most of them are working out of their car on a laptop, putting stuff together for the shows. Any questions for me about the newsroom itself?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. You said that the multimedia journalists, they do everything alone. So do they even edit all their videos themselves?
Yeah, they're editing they all have laptops, and they use Edius. And a lot of times they'll just sit in their car and edit a package.
So they film everything themselves too, so they set up the camera.
They've got camera, they've got gear, lights, mics, all that stuff. They do it all themselves. Yep. Any other questions so far? Yeah.
As a news producer, do you also manage written component of the same video, or you just focus on the broadcast part?
It kind of depends. We write most of the show, other than what the reporters write. So we have to do that. We do pick out videos for all the other stories we write and manage pretty much every component. I mean, the reporter's bringing us one thing and we're deciding where it's going and picking other things as well. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess going on with this question, how long does it typically take those multimedia reporters to turn a story?
It depends. We've had folks go to, like, let's say, what's a good example? So a few months ago, our police department in Roanoke sent out an email at like noon that they're having a press conference at 2:30 about some gang stuff, and the reporter went out to it and did like a little mini package for 5. So they tracked, they used some sound bites, all that stuff, and they did that for the 5. So it can be kind of tight. Most days though, a day-sider who comes in at 9 or 9:30 can expect to go out to something maybe at 10, 10:30, 11, sometime in that time frame, and maybe turn the package for 5 or 6. So there's more time. It just depends on the day. With breaking news, it's going to be a lot more up to the minute, but you're not going to do like a package on breaking news. You're just going to go out and do it, and we'll just get whatever we can get back at the station. So it depends. Yeah. So one thing I think a lot of producers run into at some point is you've got a ton of stuff going on. You have so much stuff. It's a busy, busy, packed news day. How do you fit it all in? I'm going to show you what a busy news day looked like for us, and then we can talk about it. You might have noticed some drama in Virginia with the governor and the lieutenant governor and everybody else. We sent a bunch of crews to Richmond, which is about 3 hours away from our station, but we sent crews there, and this was the result. This is. They stayed in Richmond for like 3 or 4 days, just covering everything as it was happening. So this was our 6 o'clock news on Saturday, which is when the governor held his press conference. I think this is it. Oh no.
Covering your hometown from 5 newsrooms across the region, this is WDBJ 7.
When my staff showed me the photo in question yesterday, I was seeing it for the first time. But I am not either of the people in that photo.
Tonight, Governor Northam denies involvement in a racist yearbook photo that has sparked national outrage and says he will continue his term.
We're here today because we live in a state that has a history of historical violence against black men and women.
Protesters demand Northam step down with mounting calls from various organizations that he resign. We have crews following this developing story. Our team coverage from Richmond starts now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Maki. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am live in Richmond with team coverage as the governor today offered an explanation after 24 hours of controversy, all surrounding a Facebook or a racist photo in a yearbook. He did say today in a nearly hour-long press conference an explanation of sorts, an apology, and then he answered some questions. So we do have our senior reporter, Joe DeShield, live tonight with us in Richmond. Joe, you were in there. You're going to break it down for us. Tell us a little bit about what happened inside.
Sarah, it's been a head-spinning 24 hours since we first learned about the racist photograph on Ralph Northam's yearbook page, since he first apologized, and since we first started hearing widespread calls for his resignation. Well, today he said after further review, he's confident the picture isn't his.
I tell the truth. I'm telling the truth today. That was not my picture.
Despite yesterday's apology for the racist picture in his medical school yearbook, Northam told reporters he hadn't seen the photo before Friday and suspected it had been placed on his yearbook page by mistake. The reason he's certain, Northam said, is because of a mistake he did make around the same time, once dressing up as Michael Jackson for a dance competition.
There are actions and behaviors in my past that were hurtful. But like Virginia, I have also made significant progress in how I approach these issues.
Northam spoke for over 40 minutes and took questions from reporters. He said he's asking for the opportunity to demonstrate that the person he was is not the man he is today.
Obviously, we'll have discussions with our caucuses, with the Republican caucuses, with the people of Virginia. And as long as I feel that I can lead, I will continue to do that. If I reach a point where I am not comfortable with that, then obviously we will sit down and have that discussion.
Northam says he's taking it day by day, but it remains to be an open question whether he can persuade anyone to change their minds. Sarah, we did hear today from the House Democratic Caucus, which indicated it is reiterating its call for Northam to resign.
Yeah, it sounds like they were not swayed by the things that he said in that press conference today. All right, thank you, Joe. And also in that press conference today, the governor did say that he's spoken several times with his lieutenant governor, Justin Fairfax, over the past 24 hours. WDBJ 7, we were part of a small team of reporters that caught up with the lieutenant governor, a Democrat, as he spoke to some people following that press conference. He said that he does support the governor. Northam has said that in the past in that press conference. And Fairfax also told reporters that he believes Northam will make the right decision for the Commonwealth. There have been a lot of calls for Fairfax to step up and replace Northam, but here's what he had to tell us about that.
You know, I've been fortunate to serve in leadership capacities, and I think there's, you know, more to come to support the people. Right now, we've got to put Virginia first and make the right decision for the Commonwealth.
So Fairfax did say that he supports the governor at this time. He said a couple of times that he thinks that the governor will do what is right for the state. We've been hearing a lot of voices. One of the ones that was very loud today was the NAACP. Eric, you were there because they had a press conference this afternoon. Talk to us about what you heard there.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. Well, the NAACP said basically they don't care whether or not it was Northam in that photo. They say he's lost the public trust and he's got to go.
We demand, not ask, that Ralph Northam resign.
Heated words today as NAACP leaders in Virginia call for Governor Northam to step down. The mood in the room is summed up in one word.
Betrayal.
Reverend Kevin Chandler leads the Virginia chapter of the group. He says he spoke to the governor last night and received an apology for the photo.
And we cannot accept that apology.
Many are now saying whether or not Northam was in the photo, he needs to go.
When your integrity becomes suspect, when your credibility becomes suspect, you can't overcome that.
Brenda Hale is president of the Roanoke NAACP. She says the photo is a symptom of a larger problem with racism in America.
You can't say it's not happening. It is very real, and it's happening every day, and it's happening at all levels of government and everyday life.
Governor Northam has said he wants to make amends for the pain he says he's caused. As to whether that's possible,
He could, but just not as governor.
Governor Northam has, or rather the NAACP has vowed to keep fighting until Governor Northam is removed from office. Sarah?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're hearing is these people that have been calling for his resignation are largely people from his own party, people who have supported him in the past, and we are seeing that they are, again, unmoved by his press conference today. All right, thank you so much, Eric Miller. Some of the people that we have also heard from today are people who are still hanging in there with the governor in this 24-hour, very rocky period. We heard some people take that message to the governor's front door today at the executive mansion. Here's what we had to hear from some protesters. Protesters gathered Saturday morning with chants and with signs. Get wrecked, Ralph. Blackface is racist. Jewel Gatling campaigned for Northam, and she's here because she says it's time for Justin Fairfax to now step in.
How are we supposed to trust him with anything else? How are we supposed to go forth in this climate where we need someone to defend us and to represent us when it comes to racism and bigotry? He can't do that.
Step back, step away so he can step forward.
A smaller group was here to support the governor, saying he should step up with new initiatives, not step down.
If we just hold on and forgive him and accept his apology and look for programs of diversity coming forward, I think we'd be the stronger state.
He deserves an opportunity to amend, to rectify, to teach. Out of this great tragedy, I believe good will come.
This this has been a very fast-moving story developing over the past 24 hours, but we're not quite finished yet. In that press conference today, the governor did say that he's going to continue to investigate that photograph, how it ended up on his yearbook picture page. And he also said that he still had not, at the time of the press conference, had a chance to see an actual copy of that yearbook yet. So, Jane, this is a story.
All right, so that was a show, I think I told you it was Saturday. So our weekend team hadn't ever done coverage like that before. I think they did pretty good considering. But there was obviously a lot to it. And so the challenge was fitting it all in. Do you feel like you got the full story? Yeah. Anything you thought was missing?
What about the allegations towards Fairfax?
That hadn't come out at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? What'd you like? What didn't you like? Yeah.
When those allegations did come out, what was your next step as far as covering the story?
We included it. I mean, and I think, gave it the time that it needed. So we got statements from the woman and her attorneys and incorporated all that into the story as well. I think we made it a separate story the day it came out and had focus just on that. And then we did some Northam stuff afterward because the Fairfax thing became the bigger story when it did come out. But yeah, so we handled it the same way. Anything you would have done differently? Something you didn't like? No? So this was, I think you can see, it was about 7.5 minutes long of just the crew in Richmond, and then after that we had even more people in different parts of the, yeah.
So, I think, I don't know if I'm going to be right, so is this something that was kind of just like thrown together and they just kind of had to get it done, or did they have like time?
So the press conference, this is an actual like newscast. Yeah. So the press conference happened at 2:30, and they got all their content together for the 6 o'clock news. Yeah, so they had a little while to work on it.
Can you tell why they were outside? Like, was that in front of the governor's office?
Yeah, so that was in front of, this is in front of the Capitol, so in Richmond, yeah. So they were on location. I will show you our 5 o'clock. This was another busy day for us. The class before got to see a little bit of our coverage of when a state trooper was shot and killed. It happened actually a little bit outside of our viewing area, about an hour away from the place where we cover typically. But we sent someone out, we sent a bunch of people out actually to cover it. And so this, you'll see the 5 o'clock news is what we came up with.
Dowell killed in the line of duty. As the investigation continues, many around the Commonwealth are remembering Dowell's legacy. This special edition of WDBJ 7 at 5 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Jane Caffrey, in tonight for Jean Jadhan.
And I'm Melissa Gayona. Tonight, state police are honoring their fallen partner, Trooper Lucas Dowell. Dowell was killed on duty last night while serving a search warrant at a home near Farmville. Dowell, a Chilhowie native and Radford graduate, was just 28 years old.
We are bringing you team coverage tonight on how this shooting unfolded, as well as how some are remembering Trooper Dowell. WDBJ 7's Ashley Ann is in Cumberland County, Bianca Holman in Radford, Leanna Scacchetti in Chilhowie, and Joe DeShiel in Richmond. Ashley, we're going to come to you first. You found out that this all happened during a raid, correct?
That's right, Jane. As a drug and gang task force was executing a warrant at a home right down the road here, that is when things turned tragic. It was just before 10 when police raided this home Monday night. That's when police say State Trooper Lucas Dowell was shot.
Yes, you give me the fastest helicopter they can get there, please.
Trooper Dowell was rushed to the hospital, where he eventually died.
You have uniformed troopers still right to the scene. We can use this help with the security so that my guys can stand down.
The operation was a part of the Regional Drug and Gang Task Force. Police say when they made entry into the home, they were met with gunfire. That's when 2 other officers fired back, killing the suspect, Corey Johnson of Cumberland County. Johnson was the only person inside the house. They say the search warrant was being conducted as part of an ongoing narcotics investigation. And no other troopers were injured in this incident, and 2 troopers that did fire their gun shooting the suspect, they've been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. And Jane, coming up at 6, you're going to hear from neighbors who are just shocked that something like this could happen in their community.
Completely shocking and just tragic to see that life cut short. Ashley, thank you very much for the report. Trooper Dowell was based at the State Police Area 20 office in Amherst. A patrol car with ribbons and flowers was placed in front of the building this morning as a memorial to Dowell. Throughout the day, dozens of people have stopped by to add flowers to the memorial and to pay their respects.
I'm just devastated, and I'm sure everybody else is too. It's just so sad and heartbreaking. Young man risking his life every day for us, and we just need to be more appreciative of the police.
Troopers who worked with Dowell at the office did not want to go on camera, but they said he was extremely well liked by his colleagues and will always be remembered for his enthusiasm.
Friends say slain State Trooper Lucas Dowell was living his dream job before his shooting death last night. WDBJ 7's Leanna Scacchetti is live in Chilhowie, Dowell's hometown. Now, Leanna, you talked with Dowell's childhood friends today. What'd they have to say?
They really had to say, Melissa, that he was just a good friend. In fact, we pulled the 2009 high school yearbook from Chilhowie High School. That was Dowell's senior year. In it, it said he was voted best smile, most school spirit, and that's the guy that his friends say he really was. They say, you know, when somebody passes away, everybody posts good things on Facebook about them, but his friends are telling us those things are true. That's what they saw in Dowell. They said during high school, every weekend they would be sleeping over at each other's places, but although he was a good friend, he was also a driven athlete, and that same drive led him to pursue a career in law enforcement that he said his friends say he knew he wanted to do 10 years ago.
He loved his job and everything about it, so that's why he was on the TAC team and did all the extra stuff, because he really loved the state police.
What's really hard right now for a lot of the folks in Chilhowie, especially those friends of Dowell, is just 6 months ago they lost another one of their friend group, Will Walker, who was a friend, teammate of Dowell, and recently teaching at Chilhowie High School, Melissa. So Dowell's death comes on the heels of this other death that they're still processing, so it's going to be some time for these folks to get through the healing process.
Yeah, and I know, Leanna, Chilhowie is such a small town, so you can only imagine the hurt that this community is feeling after these tragic losses. Leanna, thank you for your report tonight.
And after graduating from Chilhowie High School, Dowell went on to Radford University. WDBJ 7's Bianca Holman is live. Bianca, what year did Trooper Dowell graduate?
Jane, he graduated in 2013, so that was just about 6 years ago when he was here. And faculty and staff who knew him say they were in shock this morning when they heard the news. Trooper Lucas Dowell spent 4 years walking across the Radford University campus and spent many days here in the Humanities Building. Dowell was a criminal justice major and looked to serve at some level.
We produce graduates who not only have a theoretical understanding of laws and issues related to criminal justice, but also who have had the opportunity to get hands-on experience in a variety of ways while they're here, so that when they go out into the community, they're well prepared to join the profession of public safety professional.
As Dowell pursued his degree, professors who knew him say he was ambitious and had his eyes set on what would be next.
They remember him as being a very dedicated student, as being very passionate in his study of criminal justice, and in wanting very much to be able to go into a position where he could help people and make a difference.
Staff said they're a close-knit group with about 100 students graduating from the program every year. So this loss is a hard hit to the community.
Radford University is deeply saddened to learn of the line of duty death of Trooper Dowell. He truly embodied the Highlander spirit during his service to the Commonwealth of Virginia and while here on the Radford University campus.
And as I talk with staff here, they say he just made a huge impression on people here on this campus and while he was here and graduated in 2013, Jane. So again, the Radford community is mourning the loss of Trooper Dowell today.
He will be missed by many. Bianca, thank you. Many lawmakers and public officials have also shared their prayers for Trooper Dowell and his family today. They included Governor Ralph Northam. Senior reporter Joe DeShield joins us live from Richmond. Now, Joe, this is the first time that Northam has spoken out since Saturday. What did he say?
Well, that's right, Melissa. Governor Northam hadn't spoken publicly since that news conference he held on Saturday afternoon, but he did release a statement earlier today on the death of Trooper Dowell. He said, "The passing of Trooper Dowell is a great loss for the Commonwealth. My heartfelt condolences go out to his family and friends who knew Trooper Dowell best. We're grateful for his dedication to the safety of our communities and for all of those who put themselves in harm's way to protect others." Officers with the Virginia Capitol Police were wearing black bands over their badges today. And we also heard from Grayson County Senator Bill Carrico, who delivered an emotional speech on the floor of the state Senate before the Senate adjourned in honor of Trooper Dowell this afternoon. Melissa, we will hear more from Senator Carrico at 6 o'clock. He knew the family of Trooper Dowell, and his son trained with the fallen officer in the state police. So he had a lot to say about Trooper Dowell. We'll hear from him again at 6.
Yeah, we're interested to hear what he had to say, especially since that close relationship. Joe, we'll see you at 6. Thank you. And Attorney General Mark Herring also tweeted his condolences earlier today, saying, quote, "It's just heartbreaking to wake up and see this terrible news. Prayers of peace, strength, and comfort to Trooper Dowell's friends, family, and BSP colleagues." And we will be continuing our coverage on Trooper Dowell and this entire investigation. Coming up tonight at 6, how close friends are remembering him. Let's turn.
Okay. Why do you think we spent so much time on this one story?
Well, Rotham had a say in it, and he was kind of, or whatever, Ralph, what's his name?
Northam.
Northam had a say in it, and he was kind of relevant to news at that time. I mean, he was kind of important. Lots of things were happening with him, and since he said something about it, maybe it would have been relevant to.
Yeah, but we talked about him like way later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wasn't like the first thing. Yeah.
He made an impact in 4 different counties, so it kind of displays that he's more influential at that moment, and he makes a bigger impact in like the 4 different communities. So it'd be, I guess, more feasible to cover him more than anything else.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
You like made the crossover between his like professional and social life by talking to his friends. I thought that was interesting because like you don't really get to see that side of police that much. Just like normal people and like friends of others.
Right. So I think you hit it on the head. I mean, this is a story that a lot of people could relate to. And the challenge was making people feel like they knew him. So that's why we put so many people behind the story, to really bring a full picture of this person's life. I mean, police officers die all the time, and I can tell you, we haven't done quite as much coverage on some, but this was a guy who happened to touch a lot of different people, so that's why. Anything you would have done differently or would have liked to see or thought wasn't really relevant?
I would want to see a citizen interacting with him, like how he just works around there.
Oh, guess what? So we had that story at 10 later that night. It took a while to track someone down, but our reporter tracked down a woman who had been pulled over by him the day before, and she had lots of good things to say about him. Actually, yeah. Yeah.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
why, is there any particular reason why you don't super all of your interviewees or like the people that you talk to? I noticed like even in last class when we were watching all the packages, you don't super any of the people that you talk to.
Sometimes we do. Sometimes it depends because we're automated and we have to code the supers. If it's a quick soundbite, we won't because it's going to take too long for it to change and change back. Sometimes the producers who put in the supers miss supers, and that's just a fact of life. It's not intentional. That's just how it goes. There was one that was held out too long, and so you saw it even after the guy had stopped talking. So those are just little mistakes that happen sometimes. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Maybe like a package from the family, like what?
It was hard to get the family. No one ever did get the family. I mean, they were obviously devastated. I think everyone would have liked to have heard from family. It was just tough. We didn't until the funeral, when they allowed media into the funeral, and so we got to hear his sister spoke. But yeah, that's a little hard to track down, and that's always a challenge. And sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. The guy also died. Yeah, so I think we mentioned that, but didn't want that to be the focus. But we did, yeah, the suspect was also killed. Yes.
One thing that I did like about this block is how the language that the anchors and the reporters use, it definitely fits with your hometown station because it made the story a lot more heartfelt, coming from the heart, with the reporters and the anchors showing sympathy to the community's family member situation instead of just reporting it as, okay, a police officer.
Right, like fact. Yeah, that's always a challenge. Producers, in my newsroom at least, do a lot of checking reporter scripts and stuff like that. So we're able to kind of guide them into the kind of language we want to use and how we want to present things. Producers are a big part of that too, of how we're going to present the story, what kind of writing you're going to use, you know, all that stuff. So, yeah.
When he got shot and he died, like, how did y'all find out that he was so well known throughout the community?
Just by chasing the story. So initially, the night that it happened, our reporter, her name's Ashley, she was off, but she'd gotten a text from one of her law enforcement sources. So we knew that it happened, that it was a big deal, and sometimes you don't really know anything about the person until you go out there and actually start digging. And in this case, we just sent a lot of different people out to different places to start digging, and we presented what we found. Yeah. But you won't know until you start looking. Let's see. So that was like too much, which is a good thing, but you know, there were lots of different things to work with there. On holidays and on slow news days, producers also have to find compelling content when it doesn't seem like there is any. And like I said, holidays are a big part of that. I'm going to show you just briefly a 4th of July show that ran. The content might surprise you. It was not a hard news day. It was not a day where we had a trooper dying or the governor getting in trouble. It was just a very slow day. All the offices are closed because everyone's out on holiday. People are cooking out. There's nothing really going on. So here's how our 5 o'clock producer handled that. They really are. They are.
What you need to know before you head out tonight.
Plus, America's pastime is on display at the Library of Congress. We'll take a look inside the Baseball Americana exhibit.
And we're here on your hometown patio with the 4th day of 90s for a lot of locations, but we have some big changes and some relief along the way.
All right, that's good news. Happy 4th of July, everyone. I'm Robin Reed, in for Jean Jethan this evening.
I'm Sarah Maki, in for Melissa Gayona. Really mixing things up tonight. We are going to start off, though, with our hometown forecast. It was a hot, muggy one on this 4th of July. The sun is beaming down, making all of us around here wonder, Brent, is there a cool down in the near future?
There is. It's a couple days away, but it's always good news just to give you a heads up, kind of, ease on into the weekend with some major cool down. So you're going to like that. Today, though, you've got to take precautions because we do have some dangerous heat once again this afternoon. If you've been outdoors, you certainly know that. Just some fair weather clouds, a lot of haze and humidity today. 90 is what the current temperature is at the Roanoke Blacksburg Airport, but once you factor in that high dew point of the amount of moisture in the air, it feels like about 94, and that's why you got to take that into consideration. Your temperature and your thermometer does not always tell you the full story on these humid days. As we look at other locations feeling almost close to triple digits at Smith Mountain Lake, because we've got more moisture there coming off the lake and evaporating into the air, so that's why it does feel quite muggy and hot. And that's helped to trigger a couple of pop-up thunderstorms across the Allegheny Highlands this afternoon. Very isolated in nature, and that seems to be primarily along and north of the Interstate 64 corridor where those are staying right now. We'll keep a close eye on the radar for you, but aside from that, it looks like things will cooperate for tonight's fireworks displays. Temperatures in the upper 80s at 6 p.m. by 9 o'clock at 82, and we will hopefully get into the 70s by midnight tonight. It's going to be another hot day tomorrow, but we'll talk more about that weekend cool down in the 7-day.
In Danville, some big changes to where the fireworks are going to be set off tonight. They're going to go from a bridge, which is causing some traffic changes and some detours. WDBJ 7's Hannah Story joins us live. Oh, Hannah, I know it's a hot day, but tell us more.
Robin, the fireworks are going to be set off from the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Bridge, which, as you can see, is right behind me here. And that section of the bridge is already closed, but we can expect even more closures throughout the evening. Danville's fireworks are changing location this year. Last year, they were set off at the Carrington Pavilion, but Parks and Recreation feels the new spot is much better.
This new location will provide a lot more viewing areas in downtown. Should provide a better show at the Carrington just because it's a little higher elevation. And it also moves the fireworks away from the Humane Society, which has been a goal of ours for a while.
Because the fireworks will go off on the bridge, that bridge will be closed to traffic. The southbound lane of Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Bridge closed at 2 o'clock, and the northbound lanes will close at 8 o'clock. The pedestrian train bridge near Carrington Pavilion will also close at 9 o'clock for safety reasons. Parks and Recreation says various areas of the Riverwalk Trail will also close throughout the evening.
If you see signs that say this area is closed, don't cross it. Don't even try it. Don't think, well, I can cross it good 50 feet more. Don't cross the sign. They all signage.
The areas that are closed will remain closed until the cleanup from the show is complete. The Parks and Recreation Department also wants to remind people not to call their office to ask when the fireworks will start. They say once it gets completely dark out, the show will begin.
And history tells us that it should be somewhere around 10 o'clock, maybe a little bit after that, but we're looking forward to a good show in Danville tonight. Thank you, Hannah.
And Chris?
Okay, I won't make you sit through 3 other firework-related stories, but that's kind of what we had to work with that day. So what did you think? That's kind of the reality of a slow news day, is you have to find something that you can.
I noticed that the reporter was wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, it was hot.
So I didn't know, like, you. What I thought is you always wear like suit no matter what. So, like,
No. Nope. No. And it had the station logo. Still professional. She had on a hat too. Sometimes their sports people will go out and they're wearing polos and pants. It just depends, but they've got to dress for the weather or else they'll look silly. Yeah.
So how often do you have stories with just one interview?
We try to avoid it, but if it's kind of unavoidable, like on a holiday where you just need like that one person who will talk to you on camera, most of our stories have 2 or more, but it's not the end of the world if you get one person, if you keep it short, you know. And I think he had some good snappy little sound bites, so it worked okay. Yeah. So we started with weather because that's one thing that impacts everybody. So no one's gonna, you know, turn on the news and be mad to see weather first, you know. And then from there we just kind of had to build it out. What is everyone talking about on the 4th of July? Fireworks, grilling, all that stuff. So whatever you can tell them to prepare works. Any other? Yeah.
On average, how long do your packages run?
Depends. I think the kind of hard cutoff we give them is like 120, unless they've gotten it approved. But our news director prefers like 110. He wants to keep things short. Sometimes you'll get a 45-second one where it's just like one sound bite and a few details. It just depends. But yeah.
I like the fact that, you know, you've got a lot of good videos
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just critical. So
It really is. And all of our MMJs really have to hone it on those skills for it all to work.
Nat sound.
Yeah, nat sound. I can tell you, when we watched the Northam stuff earlier, when we got those shots of the lieutenant governor walking, that was our reporter's iPhone. They shoot stuff on their cell phones often, maybe not the whole story, but some shots, and it works. I don't think you could tell that, you know, the lieutenant governor was on an iPhone and not a camera on someone's shoulder. So you use every tool available to you, and our MMJs really have to do that. There are apps. You can shoot it on your phone, cut it, send a VO into somebody, just like that. So you've got to know what's out there. But that's kind of what a slow news day looks like. Let's see. I actually kind of want to skip ahead a little bit to talk about ethics.
How many news shows do y'all have?
So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3.
When do you start?
4:30 a.m. So we've got 4:30 to 7, and then 7 to 9, noon, 4, which is an hour long, 5 o'clock is a half hour, 6 o'clock is a half hour, the 10 o'clock is an hour, and I produce that show, and then the 11 is a half hour.
What's your highest rated show?
The 6 o'clock pulls in an 11 or 12 each night, which means a lot of people watch. Yeah.
Why do y'all have an 11 o'clock, a 10 and
So the 10 o'clock is on our second station, and the 11 is on our main station. So it's kind of weird, but we have two TV stations. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your average viewership for the 6 o'clock special? How many people watch the 6 o'clock special on average?
I don't have an actual number, but it pulls in between an 11 and a 12, which is really high. The other competing stations, their show at the same time gets about a 5. So we get a 12, they get a 5. So there's a big difference.
Out of what?
Yeah.
12 out of what?
That's just the, yeah.
No?
So I'll skip ahead a little to ethics. I went ahead and just pulled out the SPJ Code of Ethics because this is kind of your bread and butter that you'll find in every news station. They may not call it the same thing, but these are the things that we strive for. You seek the truth and you report it, right? You minimize harm, act independently, and be accountable and transparent. I think the best way to put it is just, you know, what's the right thing to do? And it can be kind of tough. I have some examples for you guys, and I'll kind of get your take. One thing that comes up a lot is cases involving people under 18 years old, so teenagers, children. A lot of times in news we don't report the names of people under 18, and there are a few reasons why. If someone's charged in a case and they're under 18, typically we will not use their name or show a mugshot or anything like that. If they've been a victim of something, usually we don't identify them because we want to minimize harm. But sometimes things are a little bit different. So I'm going to show you this story real quick, and then I'll get your take. And this is just one story.
Today, a teenager pleaded no contest to all 3 charges involving the death of his 16-year-old girlfriend. WDBJ 7's Katie Rashecko is live outside the Montgomery County Courthouse. Katie, where does the case stand today?
Jane, both families were in court today as the Commonwealth read out loud a detailed report of the car wreck that happened last July, leaving 1 person dead. Now it's up to the judge to decide a fair ruling.
On the night of July 22nd, 2018, 16-year-old Alex Leonard got behind the wheel of his girlfriend, Ashlyn Poole's father's Ford Focus. The two turned down Mud Pike Road in Christiansburg. According to the Commonwealth's report, the car was traveling 86.1 miles per hour just 5 seconds before it crashed. The speed limit on that road is 40. The report also said the car hit a raised driveway, became airborne, traveled over 50 feet, and struck a power pole 15 feet off the ground.
Poole was pronounced dead at the scene. She was not wearing a seatbelt. Leonard was found hanging upside down from his seatbelt and taken to the hospital. He suffered a brain bleed and was unconscious for 3 days. According to his attorney, Leonard has no memory of that day's events. At the time of the crash, he had a learner's permit and was not legally allowed to drive without an adult. He's been charged with involuntary manslaughter, driving without a license, and reckless driving. He pleaded no contest to each of these charges. The judge told the court he was not ready to make a decision at this time. Leonard's next court appearance is in April, where the court will hear his social history, victim impact statements, and possibly the judge's ruling. Now, before dismissing us, the judge addressed the court. He said that the word tragedy is used so often that it often loses its meaning. But today he said that for both families involved, it really is a tragedy in the full meaning of the word. Jane?
Completely tragic by all accounts, and certainly more to come in this case. Katie, thank you.
Okay, so what did you think? Would you have used his name? Knowing what you know about the case, would you have used his name? Why? Hmm? It was not in juvenile. It was. Oh. So we didn't have cameras inside or anything like that. Only allowed in courtrooms in Virginia? It depends. Not in J&D court, but for a lot of other regular cases, yeah.
I would have used it.
You would have?
Yeah.
Why?
Would anybody else say?
No, I was just wondering why you guys chose to. That's all.
Well, I want to hear your answer.
Happy to. But,
Yeah.
I would have used it because this probably was a case that everybody heard about. It wasn't, it wasn't like somebody who was raped or something like that, but a car accident and they looked like they were sweethearts or whatever maybe. So I have a feeling that everyone knew about the case. It
Yeah.
wasn't as if no one knew that the girl died and they were dating and it was boyfriend, girlfriend. And,
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think, if you're looking at a rape case, that's different.
Right.
This was a very probably, I'm going to think, very public thing that happened
It was.
in this hometown.
Yes, it was. So a few things. I'll give you a little more context because this story, we'd been following it for months. It happened last summer, initially is when it happened. It happened in a small town, Christiansburg. Everyone heard about it. Everyone knew about it. We talked to his grandmother off camera, but a reporter either the day after it happened or a couple days after talked to the family about it. I mean, it's not like no one knew who they were. And also, I mean, there were so many different things happening. After she died, there were vigils, there were fundraisers, and he was often brought up too. People knew him as well. People were saying, pray for Alex too, because he was in really bad shape when all this happened. So it just seemed like the right thing to do to tell the full story for everyone involved. So some stations in our same market, our competing stations, a couple of them did not use his name and never did. It's a judgment call, but ethically I think it still checks out. Yeah.
So they wouldn't use his name, but they would show the pictures?
Exactly. It's weird. You wouldn't do that. Yeah. Right, and people would recognize him from the pictures. So, yeah. So that was example number 1. I'll show you a case from last week and see what you think.
Henry County deputies are investigating an unthinkable crime. Over the weekend, 32-year-old Eric Barksdale was shot and killed right in front of his 4-year-old daughter. Today, we spoke with Barksdale's fiance. As Kendall Davis reports, she's pleading for the suspect to turn himself in.
It's real hard to be strong, but I gotta be.
Camille Daniels is trying to push forward after her fiance, Eric Barksdale, was killed at their home. She says her 17-year-old cousin was visiting their home on Saturday night. Daniels tells us Barksdale wanted the 17-year-old to keep the noise down while the kids were sleeping, and they began to argue. The two took it outside, and seconds later,
It went flip side. Like, it was supposed to be, you could prove to me that you're a man, with these. But instead of these, he got shot.
Daniels ran to the front of the house only to find her fiance fighting for his life and their 4-year-old daughter traumatized on the couch. The young child saw everything unfold right in front of her eyes.
She's sleepwalking and reenacting what she saw, and the only thing she can say is, so-and-so shot my daddy and he's dead.
Police say the 17-year-old ran away after the shooting. They aren't telling us his name because he is a juvenile, but have confirmed that he is in fact the suspect. Now, as police search for the teen, Daniels must try to find a way to move on without the rock of her family.
I don't know which direction to go. It's a lot that I lost out on and the children lost out on. They lost out on a wonderful dad, somebody that was there from day one, never missed a doctor's appointment, anything.
In Martinsville, Kendall Davis, WDBJ 7.
Okay, so yeah.
So they blurred the picture of the girls out in the beginning.
But he didn't later. Yeah, that was an editing mistake.
Okay,
that wasn't intentional. Yeah.
Why would they not show the picture of the 17-year-old?
Typically, like I said, usually we don't identify a juvenile in a case. And this was a little bit of a different case. This wasn't like a, driving and an accident happens. This was something a little bit different. So, we could have, because she knew him, she could have told us his name and we could have gone that route. But in this case, it didn't quite fit. Yeah.
Yeah, also, he's still a suspect, right? And
They're looking for him.
Against him. So, and also the point of the story is kind of, I guess, more of the, I hate
Who
saying
the
more
victim
tragedy
was.
because it's been
Right.
so much in the past, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's more about the loss of a father.
Right,
That's more of
right.
the focus. So I think that was a good idea to not really put the 17-year-old in it so much right now.
Yeah, and it's standard for us not to.
Yeah.
So exceptions are made, sometimes, but for the most part we don't. So, they found him a couple days later, and even then the police didn't release a picture or name or anything like that. So he has been charged, and we're working on follow-ups. But I can tell you, for example number 1, again, it kind of reached everybody, and I can kind of tell you the Commonwealth's attorney invited all media to go cover that case. In fact, I'll read you a little bit of what she said in her email for the driving accident. This is a case where I'd be happy to have some media coverage and hope that other young drivers might recognize the heavy burden of responsibility involved in driving. So it's really not just about, putting this kid on blast. It was like, this is a really serious, important thing, and we want his peers to see it and his friends to understand the gravity of what happened. So a little bit of a different situation. I also think the teenager involved in this case was from North Carolina, not our area. So those kinds of things are factored in.
You guys might remember it in your philosophy classes, utilitarianism, greatest good to the greatest number. Put it in a way, if you're justifying.
Yeah. I can give you another example. I don't have it up here, but I'll get your take. So a few weeks ago, we had a case where these 2 girls were living together, going to school together at a local university. By all accounts, best friends. Like, they're all over each other's social media. They're friends with each other's parents on Facebook. They're close. They're tight. One girl stabbed the other to death. She was arrested. So obviously all the local media covered the case. Some search warrants and court documents, became available pretty early into the case, and they laid out everything. They laid out how the girl called 911, how she answered the door for officers covered in blood, held out her hands and said, "I killed her, arrest me," according to the warrant. An officer, I think, was asked to ballpark how many stab wounds he thought she had, and he said between 30 and 40. And the search warrant, or the arrest warrant, I guess, also detailed that the girl was found with the knife sticking out of her mouth. This is all information that has been made available to media. Do you report everything that I just told you? Do you report all the details?
I think it depends on what time of the show, what time of the day you're. You know, like if you're doing it in the morning.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Wrong. What do you say?
I want to know the news, but I guess I could have just Googled it too.
Right, because it'll be on our, when I say reporting, I'm not just talking about on TV. We have a website, we have Facebook, all this stuff. So it's going to be out there. Whatever we decide to report is going to be out there. So how many of you would report everything I just told you? All the details? You would?
I would.
And you would?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have reported the stab wounds, but the knife
Mm-hmm.
in the mouth is kind of crass.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I go.
When I think about like the victim's family, it's like they wouldn't want that information exposed because they're trying to mourn and that would make it way worse.
Sure.
Disgusting.
Sure. So we chose not to report every detail. We did report about the arrest and the things I told you about what she said. We did not report the thing about the knife in her mouth, and we did not report a guess, basically, of how many times she was stabbed. The medical examiner will determine that anyway, not this officer who's just telling us what he saw. So we did not. Other stations did. So when we went to this girl's funeral, you know, it was obviously everyone was very torn up about the whole thing. Family beside themselves, all that stuff. A couple days later, a woman in our sales department who knew the family and, you know, was close with them said, you know, they're just very appreciative that your coverage was tasteful. The family was grateful that we didn't report every single thing that happened. And she was told that that family was not going to watch the other station anymore because they did. So it really just depends. You do have to think about your impact. And, you know, we're a kind of small, we cover 26 counties, but it's a small, tight area. And a lot of people knew this girl. And you have to really think about the impact and minimizing harm, which is one of the little ethics I showed you. Yeah?
Just curious, did y'all ever discover the motive? Yes.
They're still investigating. It happened,
Well, I mean,
it happened a few weeks ago.
that's terrifying.
We have guesses, but I won't speculate.
Did you guys say the name of the victim at all?
Yeah, we did. She was like 20, 21, so these are both college students.
If the motive was released by the police, would you guys publicly recommend?
Would we what? Oh, report it? Yeah. We would do follow-ups, and we would try to, again, keep it tasteful and keep the family in mind, but people do want to know what happened. It's, like I told you, it caught everyone off guard. So it's a case we'll be following too.
You said that you guys went to the funeral as well. I'm curious how you kind of balanced being sensitive to the situation and people at the funeral and coverage.
Yeah. So the first thing is that we are not going to show up at a funeral unless we've been given the okay. So the family was all right with it and allowing cameras in and kind of open about it. They led a prayer for the suspect. I mean, they were very open about everything. And so you do have to find the balance. You do have to report the facts, but you've also got to keep in mind the family, and it's a thin line. And you just kind of have to do that gut check when you're doing it and say, does this feel right? Are we on the right track here? Or is there something off? Should we talk about it? And our newsroom is one where you can talk about it. If you have a question, if you disagree, you can talk about it. We have had many debates in the editorial meetings or just out in the newsroom about how we're going to do stuff. And it just depends. It's case by case. Yeah, it is. You've got to like talk to each other, and especially if you're getting into your first job, ask questions, ask why, so that you know. Yeah.
Do you think that
I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I just think it's different, right? Different values, different goals when you're putting out the news, you know. But it's not part of our brand. I told the other class, we're your hometown station, so that's kind of how we have to approach our stories. As people who either grew up in or have embraced our area as their own, how are you going to go about your stories? Let's see. Any questions about, yeah?
So when y'all do go ahead and like debate, like ethically, what y'all
Sure.
pick, like how do y'all decide? Is it just a vote, or?
No, it's not a vote. We have a news director and he gets the final say. So he's happy to talk with any of us about what we think. And sometimes you're able to convince him, right? You're able to, you know, get him to see your side or get him to see a different side. And sometimes he's like, I hear you, I see you, but that's not what we're doing today. And that's fine. When you're the boss, that's your job. And if something goes south, you're also the one who has to take responsibility for it. So there's that trade-off. But yeah, conversations happen. And sometimes he'll say, yeah, you know, both things you've said are right, but we're just going to do option one. You know what I mean? Like, both could work. You could lead with either one of those things, but I just like weather better. You know what I mean? It just depends. Yeah?
So when you send reporters out into the field, how big of a team do they have to like be able to get shoot video and get everything done in a timely manner?
Typically, they are their own team. It's just them. Yeah. Yep. They shoot it, they write it, they edit it, they set up their live shot, and they break down their live shot, and they drive themselves home and everything. But yeah, it's a one-man band. Any other questions for me?
Earlier you told me how you got into this business. Can you share that story again?
Yeah, so in high school, I wanted to be a reporter. And so I went to school, just went to college like you guys. When I graduated, I had a reel, was not good, and I applied to lots of different places. And no one called me back and no one, you know, was interested. And then I saw a producing position at my station in my hometown. And I read through the description of what you need to be able to do, and I thought, I can do that. And I just applied. I got called in and did the interview, the whole bit, and they offered me the job. And I was very surprised because I had no qualifications and I had never produced before. But that really just kind of speaks to the need for producers. Everyone wants to report. No one wants to be the one putting it all together, but that's what we need the most of. So even if you're not 100% sure and you want to get your foot in the door, you've just got to be willing to take a position that may not be your ideal position so that you can get to where you want to be. One of our main morning anchors started as a camera operator in the studio, and then she became a web producer. And then after a while, she got her own little trending segment on the 10. After that, she got promoted to weekday morning reporter, and now she's an anchor. And sometimes that's how it is. You know, it's not from point A to point B. It's like A, B, C, D, E, F, maybe back to D, maybe ahead to G, and where you want to be. So be prepared for that.
You said you like producing, you're glad you didn't go into reporting.
I love producing. I would not be an MMJ for any amount of money. It's tough. I cannot imagine, you know, the deadlines, the long hours, and, you know, not a ton of resources. It's hard. I wouldn't want to do it. I also wouldn't want to anchor, and I wouldn't want to be a director. I love producing. And when you love something, it doesn't feel like work. And we get to do some cool stuff. I mean, I don't know if that's how you pictured southwestern Virginia, but there's kind of a lot going on sometimes, and that's cool. And the most fun is being able to take all that stuff and put it all together, you know. Anything else? Nope.
So at this point, maybe we can talk about tomorrow's newscast. All right, well, let me have a look. Okay. That was great. That was awesome.
Oh, there's my email and my work number if you need it.